Today, I get to sit down with a man I've been a fan of for a long time. His name is Dan Buettner, and he taught us all what blue zones are. So Dan's an interesting guy. He's an explorer, he's a journalist, he's a storyteller, he's a scientist, and he's really brought a new way of thinking about life and how we want to live better, longer lives. So he's an expert on longevity. He's done the work. You've seen him on Netflix with the new special he has out that's terrific. You've read his books. You've seen all his writings and teachings. I'm thrilled to have had the chance to spend some time with him today. I think you'll really learn a lot and get to know a guy who's a pretty neat and special guy. Oh, and by the way, he owns 3 cycling records that are in the Guinness Book of World Records. Stay tuned. Dan, I'm a fan of yours. I saw you speak a year and a half or so ago in Lake Nona. I love the work you're doing with Blue Zones. My wife and I have a place in Naples, Florida, where your company's been very active and very effective. I just marvel at how you've built a body of work, a collection of interest, different ways of manifesting itself, and seem to be doing exactly what you want to do. But more than that, impacting the lives of so many other people. It seems like if you're going to say, there's a guy who's got it all figured out and doing what he wants to do, the way he wants to do it, it's you.
I'm working with an organization called the Global Burden of Disease Project. It's about 10,000 scientists worldwide who've gathered the health span data. And we identified the 4 disparate areas in the world where people enjoy the longest health-adjusted life expectancy. So people who've achieved what we want, a long life in full health. And then over the past 2 years with National Geographic, a small team, we've gone to try to piece together the explanation or the cake recipe, so to speak.
Dan, take us back, if you would, to the early days. I know you're a native of the Twin Cities area, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Was your first career path in journalism?
Yes, I wrote for the Twin City Reader, which is a local weekly alternative newspaper.
So you have a book coming out this September, right?
Yes, thank you for asking about it. So I'm of the firm belief. Okay, first I'll tell you some interesting thing. If you're eating a Blue Zones type diet, which is the diet of centenarians, which is 90% or so whole plant-based food. You know, there's a little meat, little eggs, little fish, but mostly it's sort of peasant ingredients. You're going to live about 10 to 12 years longer than you're eating, and then if you're eating a standard American diet. And this comes from a meta-analysis which followed millions of people for 30 years. So the only way we're going to get close to eating like that is if people start eating at home again, and the only way they're going to do that now is, number one, if it's fast, people perceive they don't have time to cook. Number 2, it's easy. People have lost their skill to cook. Number 3, it's affordable. And number 4, and I would argue the most important, is it's delicious. There's so much hyper palatable food out there that unless you can cook something at home that competes with all that ultra processed junk that, that napalms our taste buds, we're not going to eat it. So I worked with Stanford, and we scraped 650,000 of the best recipes off the internet. And we analyzed the flavor patterns that Americans love the most. We found 7 of them. And based on those 7 insights, and with the guidelines from what people in Blue Zones actually ate over the last 100 years, we formulated 100 one-pot meal recipes. And the name of my book is Blue Zones One Pot. My last Blue Zone Kitchen book was a number 1 New York Times bestseller, and I'm hoping this one exceeds it.
The whole one-pot meal idea. And frozen it sounds to me like it was a great choice for you to do, because it does damage the food the least,
Correct.
Preserve its nutrient value. And we have a terrific cold chain in this country where you can do that and get it everywhere.
I get some snarky comments once in a while on Instagram, you're selling out. But no, I don't think I am. To try to create a shelf-stable product that's whole plant-based food is almost impossible because you have to add sodium and preservatives. The beauty of frozen, we put it in a bamboo bowl. It's 100% whole food plant-based, so there's no artificial ingredients. And as long as you source organic and the freshest ingredients. Here's the big secret of frozen food. I'm telling you this, Jim. I don't tell many people this, but I'm telling it to you. Most frozen food is batched cooked. So whether you're cooking the leafy part or the beans or the carrots, they all need to be cooked at different temperatures for the optimal sort of texture and flavor. We cooked each of our ingredients at the exact right time and temperature, and then we assembled it rather than batch cook it. So we don't need all the sugar and salt and flavor enhancers that our competitors do, and it tastes delicious without delivering the junk.
And how important is it to add olive oil?
It's important. Fat is what intensifies flavor. So that's an oil we do use, and some people tend to demonize fat, but it's one of the 3 macronutrients that our bodies require. And the best fat, I would argue, is olive oil, not coconut oil, not even avocado oil. Olive oil is for sure the best, and if you can cook and add that to your salads, you're ahead of the game. And
are you someone who recommends people consume olive oil? I hear people drinking a shot of olive oil in the morning.
No, that's dumb. It's too many calories. A tablespoon of olive oil has 120 calories. It's just too many. No, you want it to enhance the flavor of your meals. Every day I got the recipe from the longest lived family in the history of the world, the Melisse family, 9 siblings, collective age 860 years, that most of them were over 100. Every day of their life, they ate the exact same minestrone soup. They had 3 beans and about 10 different vegetables and herbs. They finished that soup with extra virgin olive oil. So they poured it over the top, and that made it taste really rich, maybe a tablespoon on top. So that preserved the quality of that oil, the healthful fats, and delivered a punch to the soup, but without delivering too many calories to the overall meal. Yeah. Pure genius.
Well, after hearing you several times, reading your books, the only dressing I use on my salad now for the last couple of years has been olive oil.
Well, you look like a healthy guy to me.
Thank God, but it's taken some work because I was on the wrong path, and it's, as you pointed out in all of your work, it's too easy to make eating mistakes.
Can you talk a little bit? I know you were an incredibly successful founder of 1-800-Flowers, right? And, I'm a bit of an entrepreneur. I know how much work it takes to build a company and get it up to the level you got it. You often don't have time to pay attention to your health. And how have you made that transition?
It's being deliberate, being thoughtful. And it's using a pen and a pad and planning. And it's also vocabulary in terms of how you talk about your cycling career. You're a cyclist. And if you vision yourself as being an athlete and a cyclist in your case, it dictates other forms of behavior. Cyclists don't sit down with a bag of potato chips. And it's easy, and all the packaged goods and all the processed foods that you talk about that have invaded our diet, it seems impossible to understand that in the last 30 or 40 years, how we've gotten less healthy as a people because of all the prepared and processed foods. Yet our medical advances have been extraordinary and continue to be, and I suspect they're only going to quicken in pace as AI really wraps itself around medical technologies and capabilities. And yet, as a result of our diet and our lifestyle, we become less healthy in the face of all this opportunity. It must drive you crazy and also give you great reason to go on and do all your work.
Well, it gives me a problem to solve. The problem with our healthcare system and even life expectancy. So life expectancy continues to go up, albeit much slower than it did when we were middle-aged and young.
Did we have a hiccup in the last couple of years because of drug overdoses in the U.S. and COVID?
Yes, those are the 2 big ones. But the overall problem is the weight of chronic disease, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer, and dementia. We lose about 760,000 Americans a year prematurely to an avoidable chronic disease. So that's more Americans than we've lost in all wars collectively. So chronic disease is a much bigger, we should be spending more money on fighting chronic disease if measured in American lives lost than we do in the military budget, but we don't do that. And the problem with our healthcare system, it's got very good at addressing sick people, and life expectancy keeps going up. But the result is we just have we're keeping sick people alive for longer. That's what our healthcare system is doing, and it's astronomical cost. When what we should be doing is shifting the focus to keeping people healthy in the first place. The problem, and you keenly understand profits and you keenly understand incentives. There's no incentive in the healthcare economy to keep people healthy. Nobody makes money if you stay healthy, Jim. The healthcare economy makes money if you go out and get a prescription filled, or you go see a doctor for a procedure, or a test, or you rent a hospital bed and services. And the countries that I've found that have the highest health adjusted life expectancy, proportionally speaking, they're making a much bigger investment in keeping people healthy in the first place.
But you're right, the incentives aren't, in the U.S. at least, aren't aligned to motivate people from an economic point of view to work on the health side.
Jack Welch famously pointed out the folly of incenting for A and hoping for B. You never get B unless you incent for it. So in this country, we incent for sickness, not overtly, but that's where the economics are, and we hope for health. And lo and behold, we have a catastrophically sick country, 70% of whom are suffering from metabolic disease.
So if you get a call this afternoon from RFK Jr., and he said, Dan, what are the 3 things I should be doing in my role as a health secretary here? What would you suggest to him that he do?
First of all, take a look at the agriculture bill. Right now, we hugely incent the production of soybeans, corn, wheat, and sugar beets. And we've gotten very good at that. And we produce about 4,500 calories and from those foods largely for every man, woman, and child in America, and an enormous incentive to market those to people. And the problem with soybean, corn, wheat, and sugar beets is they're the inputs of the processed food. It's a feed for feedlot animals, for factory farm beef, pork, chicken, and so forth, which is not good for us, I would argue, factory farm. And, Doritos and candy bars and packaged sweets, etc. Those are what's cheap. Why? Because the inputs are cheap. Yeah. And if we had to pay the real costs and the externalities of those products, the water quality that's harmed and the environment that's harmed, those inputs would be 3 or 4 times more. The products would cost 3 or 4 times more, and our Coke and a bag of chips would cost $10 or $8 or something like that. And while everybody should be able to treat themselves once in a while, the fact that we're eating 240 pounds of meat a year, about 70% of Americans' food consumption comes from processed or ultra-processed food, it's making us sick. And until we realize that, things aren't going to change.
That's on a macro level. But your work has been to, especially through Blue Zones LLC, you're going to work with municipalities, with universities, with large organizations and say, here's a menu, policy changes that you can make that start to tilt the needle back in the other direction.
Yes, the overarching idea is, Jim, you and I were both started companies, we're both disciplined, and not everybody's like that. And we tend to judge the rest of the world based on our own values and our own work ethic and our own way of looking at things. But for most people, and it's clearly is vetted by the data, people don't have the resources, the time, the energy to find a diet, find an exercise program or supplement regimen, or go to a concierge doctor. Diets fail for almost all people all the time anyway in the long run. Same with exercise programs. It's just, you wish it were different, but it's just not. People do not have individual responsibility for long enough to make a difference. So if that doesn't work, what does? What Blue Zones LLC does is we're hired by cities to come in and change the environment, change the policies, the grocery stores, the restaurants, the workplaces, the schools. We come for 5 years. We work with the entire city, and we set up nudges and defaults to set Americans up for success. Right now, we're set up for failure. We live in a food environment where 95 out of 100 choices are bad for us. We're spending three times more time in cars than you and I did when we were kids, and we're not moving enough. And until we change the environment so the healthy choice is easier, unavoidable, we're never going to get 350 million Americans on the same page for long enough to address this disease issue in our country.
At Harry and David, we work with our hands as well as our hearts, so you can enjoy sharing it as much as we enjoy making it. And that's what life's really all about, sharing with those we're closest to, no matter how far we are apart. Harry and David, share more. The correlation between processed foods and the diabetes epidemic is undeniable.
Well, put it this way. In the 1970s, we had about 1/6. Processed food was essentially invented it became ubiquitous in 1970. That's when the General Mills and the Kraft started hiring food scientists. That's when high fructose corn syrup came on the scene and these flavor enhancers and so forth. So in 1970, there were about 1/6 as many people, proportionally speaking, suffering from type 2 diabetes than there is today. So you can, if you track the ubiquity of processed food and type 2 diabetes, they go hand in hand.
So back to your advice to the Secretary of Health, I've heard you talk about the one thing that you'd most like to eliminate from American diets that you think is the most harmful, and that's soda pop.
Yeah, well, that's the number one source of refined sugars in the American diet. We've gotten a little bit better about that in the last 5 or 10 years. It's dipped a little bit. That's the biggest, but it's still only 5 or 7% of the calories from sugar that we consume. It's not that. We have to adjust the system, and the system is junk food inputs are too cheap, and number two, gasoline is too cheap. I know that's not a popular statement, but if you go to the parts of the world where people are walking, taking 10 to 12,000 steps a day, gas is very expensive. Singapore, they enjoy 12 extra years of life expectancy, healthy life expectancy over Americans. Only 11% of them can afford to have a car. What do the other 89% do? They walk. They walk to the subway. They walk to the store. So, gas is artificially subsidized here in the United States, and we spend entirely too much time in our cars, which means we're not walking. And the air quality issues, if you look at the global burden of disease, air quality issues shave about 5 years off our life expectancy. If you live near, air quality is not good in America, comparatively speaking. That's, I wouldn't say largely, but to a significant extent due to automobile exhaust.
I'm looking out at a major road here on Long Island and truck traffic, car traffic going down. I know every couple of few years I have to change the tires on my car because they wore down. Where did the wear down go? Where did those particulates, where did it all go? What happens to it all?
It becomes a significant portion of air pollution.
You mentioned a couple of things in passing there. Concierge medicine. Fan of the idea? Would you recommend people look into it? The people who do the battery of tests, the deep blood work tests. Is that a good thing? Is that something you recommend?
Well, if you have tens of millions of dollars and you can afford it, it's not a bad idea. But it's not a solution. It's not the right thing to focus on to get a healthier America.
But if they can afford it, it's a good thing to do?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 3. The problem is, by the time you're hiring a concierge doctor, you probably already have the problems. And it's too late. So what's a concierge doctor going to do? It's going to charge you a lot of money to do a litany of blood tests, maybe an MRI, a whole body scan, and a tiny percentage you'll find some worrisome cancer that you could catch early. But And that's single digit percentages. The other 90 or so percent, what they're going to do is they're going to tell you you're overweight, like most Americans are. They're going to tell you certain your blood pressure is too high, your cholesterol count is out of whack, and they're going to tell you to get more exercise, eat healthy, get sleep, and get the stress out of your life. Maybe they'll give you a statin, if your cholesterol is too high, or some blood pressure medicine. But in all probability, the concierge doctor is going to tell you what you already know.
Mm-hmm. Statins have certainly become a controversial topic lately. Your thoughts? Is it? I started taking a statin probably 12, 15 years ago at the recommendation of a friend who was a CEO of a pharma company, and he asked me if I took a statin. I said no, my cholesterol's fine. He goes, it could always be better. And he suggests, so on my next visit to the regular doc, I said, here's what a friend said. He goes, makes sense. So he put me on a statin. Was that a good thing? Should we be taking statins even if we don't have high levels of too high a level of cholesterol? Is it true that it could always be lower, or has that been debunked?
It's the wrong target. What your doctor should be telling you is to eat a Blue Zones diet, which will not only lower your cholesterol, but about 90% of Americans don't have enough fiber in their diet. So Blue Zones diet is going to give you enough fiber so your gut is healthy. Your gut will produce short chain fatty acids, which help control inflammation, modulate your immune system, provide the inputs for the feel good hormones like endorphins. You'll get the micronutrients you'll need to keep your brain healthy, the antioxidants to keep the inside of your arteries healthy. I don't know why a doctor's telling you to take statins. It's 10 times better to eat right than it is to rely on a pharmaceutical. What happens with a lot of people who, I'm taking this statin now, I'm fine. And then they pull into the drive-through at McDonald's. Yes. Or they're sticking a needle in their belly with Ozempic.
Yep.
It's not the right way. It's not sustainable. And it makes somebody a lot of money.
Yep, sure does.
It doesn't feed a healthy population.
Look into your crystal ball. What are we going to be saying about all these people taking GLP-1s 3 years from now?
It was a bad idea. It was expensive. And while the people got short-term relief, lost weight in the short term, they weren't able to sustain it. And there's a number of collateral problems that weren't foreseen. And I would argue, most importantly, that when it comes to longevity, quality longevity, reducing your appetite for not only food but all the other things that GLP-1s reduce your appetite for, maybe they add a few months to your life expectancy, but they weren't quality years. They weren't yours. I wish everybody could go visit a Blue Zone, because these are places. I haven't told you where they are, but they're Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece. Their life expectancy at middle age is 8 to 10 years longer than ours are. And those are healthy years. Yeah. So,
and how did the term Blue Zone come about, Dan?
My colleague Gianni Pes was zeroing in on villages with high concentration of people who've made it to age 90 over the last 150 years. That's how you determine longevity. And there was an area in the Nuoro province of Sardinia. He denoted a village with the very certain high concentration, 2 standard deviations from the norm. And there were so many in this mountain area in Nuoro, that it appeared on a map as a blue blob, and we just referred to it as Blue Zone.
Because branding and vocabulary is so important, and you're a master at it, because you make complex ideas simple with good vocabulary, good branding, and you've done that with your food line now. You've done it with all of your books. The Blue Zone was the start of it. It's just very clever and very just something to be admired about how you go about that. In terms of your Blue Zone work, and particularly, do you have any anecdotal information about people who've changed their diet by going to a heavy regimen of your frozen bowls, your Blue Zone 1 bowls?
No, not my bowls, but people who start cooking from my cookbooks. I have dozens of people who've lost 25 or 30 pounds. I just did in Miami. I have a small family foundation. I funded a program that taught inner city mothers how to cook. And I gave them that worked. I had several ladies that have reported losing 10 pounds or more. And so the idea, Jim, was giving people the hardware, i.e., an Instapot, and then for 10 weeks in a row, I put them in. I helped them put into what organize themselves into moais, these kind of friend circle, and they cook together from my book, Blue Zone's One Pot Meals. But the key is, number one, they got to select the recipes from a book of 100, and number two, then we had a professional help them cook it. So they gained the skills. They now had the hardware, and the most important thing is they got to taste it. And it's not until they taste it and say, wow, this tastes good, that it imprints in their brain in a way that they'll do it again. And then if you can build a social circle around them, you have all the elements necessary to make it a long-term practice. And that's when sparks really begin to fly.
Yeah, I think the last point is the one you need 5 exclamation points behind, because you create community there. You create community with this trust, reinforcement, and we all know that the key to any healthy life is good, plentiful, special and deep relationships. Not just deep and personal relationships, but relationships of all kind. I know at the beginning of COVID, a friend of mine did some work around the impact he thought the shutdown would have on us in terms of relationships. His name is George Everly at Johns Hopkins, and he was so spot on in predicting the impact. And he started to highlight for us that even that casual, that familiar wave to a barista when you're getting your coffee in the morning, how that matters in terms of the scheme and scope of all the different kinds of relationships we have, and how all of that goes into the one bowl of our life of what makes us happy and healthy.
Yes, and not only that, health behaviors are contagious. The Blue Zone, one of my top prescriptives, if you want to live longer, is curate your immediate social circle. We know that if your 3 best friends are obese and unhealthy, there's a 150% better chance that you'll be overweight. Loneliness, laziness, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, those are all measurably contagious. Nicholas Christakis at Yale has done this work. So curating, being very intentional who you let into your inner circle. And while I would not tell you to dump your unhealthy, unhappy, toxic friends, they probably need you. I would say that perhaps the best intervention, the best thing you can do to add good years to your life is bring some people into your immediate circle whose idea of recreation is pickleball or golf, and who care about on a bad day and who challenge you. And it's not a bad idea to have a vegan or vegetarian in that immediate circle, because they're going to show you how to eat delicious plant-based food.
It doesn't have to be bad tasting. In fact, it should be and can be delicious.
I challenge you to try my Blue Zone minestrone, which is on my website, danbuettner.com.
The other thing we hear about, that I've been hearing about and reading about lately, is the amount of plastics we consume. You asked about my lifestyle. One of the things I and we in my family changed a year and a half ago was, if it comes in a bag, don't eat it, except the nuts. And that's been simple and easy, hard to do, but simple and easy to understand what to do, and that's made a difference. But I think every time I pick up a bottle of water, I'm thinking about what should I be doing to avoid the ingestion of plastics where I can avoid it. You mentioned the particulates in the air when you're next to a freeway. Maybe that's not avoidable. But maybe you could choose to live someplace differently, or office someplace differently. But what concerns should we have about ingestion of plastics?
Well, we know for sure that they are a contributor to cancer and cardiovascular disease. I don't know how much, and I would list it kind of in the middle of the pack of things to worry about when it comes to your health. But I do like your idea of not eating things that come out of a bag, because further, you're way more likely, almost all processed foods show up in a bag. So you're much more likely to be eating whole food. And that's really the building block to a healthy diet.
Hmm.
So you kind of a twofer there with that easy mnemonic or easy.
From gratitude to comfort, new beginnings to birthdays, celebrate life's moments with something special. Find the perfect gift at Harry and David. We make it easy to be thoughtful. There's a fellow I've gotten to know. I mentioned I saw you speak in Orlando, and there's a fellow I met there in Orlando who's doing some great work, like you, with the Overtown Project. He's doing it in Orlando. He created something called the Four Rivers Farm. And he was aghast to find out that the children in the Orlando school system didn't know where food came from and didn't know what real food was or how to eat it. So he created this not-for-profit agricultural operation that's teaching kids where food comes from. He told me the story about he had some kids from a grammar school out there, and he pulled a carrot out of the ground and went to eat it, and they were horrified. And so he created this hydroponic, aquaponic growing facility there. He grows a lot outdoors too. But he built a culinary center to do like what the work you've done at Overtown, where you bring people in, you teach them what food is, the benefits of food, what isn't food, teach them how to cook, prepare it, but like you learned and have populated, he created a social environment where people feel like they're part of a community of people who are on a journey together. And he's realized that's one of the most important things he's able to do.
That's a great idea. He should be awarded Presidential Medal of Health.
He's expecting 350,000 tourist visits to his farm this year. You know, he's in the tourist capital of the world in Orlando, and he said, well, let's capitalize on it and take this message to a lot of people. And so he's taking a page out of your book, and you two are of the same mind and of the same commitment to doing good things for other people.
I do have a little tweak to that, though. You know,
Sure.
You often hear, let's get more healthy fruits and vegetables or fresh fruits and vegetables into the inner city. But there's a lot of friction there because, you know, they're not shelf stable. Many places that have the necessary refrigeration. It's a pretty big leap from going from, you know, eating at Taco Bell or something to eating a fresh salad or a carrot out of the ground. But there's an intermediate step. When you look at the diet of the world's longest lived people, the number one ingredient is beans. If you're eating a cup of beans a day, it's worth about 4 extra years of life expectancy.
Good life expectancy,
Good life
right?
expectancy.
Healthy life expectancy.
Yeah. And whole grains are the other. And whenever you take a bean and a grain and you put them together, you get a whole protein. So in other words, a bean taco and a corn tortilla, that has as much protein as a small hamburger. Or beans and rice. Again, you got a bean and a grain, a whole protein. Or pasta and fagioli. I would rather start in the inner city with those. Why? They're cheap, they're shelf stable, and the recipes people will immediately recognize use these ingredients. And you know, you're just eliminating a lot of the friction to actually getting people to eat these things. And you know, while you know, I love people to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, organic all the time, it's just not realistic in the immediate future.
As being the prince of bowls, how do you feel about people ordering poke bowls?
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, I'd make them a 4 or 5. You mean the raw fish, right?
Beans, rice, fish, seaweed.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the raw fish. Typically, the tuna, it tends to be high in heavy metals. You talk about pollutants, fish are aggregates. It's a fish. Why not just stop with the beans and rice? If you're doing it for health, you're adding an unhealthy element to what could be a very healthy dish. You downgrade it by adding the raw fish.
Among the communities that you've worked with, is there one or two that really stand out that you think you're doing a terrific job that you've been working with for a while in the Blue Zone LLC work?
Fort Worth, Texas, you know, probably one of the most conservative cities in America. I didn't think they would embrace this approach, but the Chamber of Commerce, Texas Health Systems, the hospital system there, and Mayor Betsy Price, those three locked arms and said, we're going to do this. So I had the business community, the private sector and the public sector all working together for 5 years. And while the rest of Texas got heavier, the obesity rate rose, we managed to curb the obesity rate by 2 or 3%. 6% of childhood obesity went down in that 5 years. So we demonstrated. And we've had 2 surgeon generals there overlooking our work, got the endorsement of both Trump's and Biden's surgeon general. Murty, good man. They're both good men. Yeah, it really worked. And it worked not because we came in and hounded a million Texans to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. We created their environment so it was easy for them to walk. It was easier for them to connect. We curbed junk food and junk food marketing. We made healthy food more accessible and more affordable. And we did it in small ways, comprehensively, over a 5-year period, and measured it by Gallup, by the way. These aren't Dan Buettner figures. These are Gallup third-party independent, and it actually worked. But you know what, Jim? There's no funding for this kind of work. We had to rely on the largesse of a hospital system to pay for this work. And it actually worked. You know, it probably saved them $250 million a year in projected
healthcare-related expenses.
Yeah, that's by their own calculations. But we don't pay for that kind of thing. We wait for people to, get type 2 diabetes, and then we pay for their dialysis and amputating their foot when it gets really bad.
So when you go out in a restaurant, is everybody looking to see what you're eating?
If they know who I am, I don't disappoint. Mexican restaurants are great when you're out and about. I eat mostly a plant-based diet. I'm about to tuck into my minestrone here. But at a Mexican restaurant, you can almost get really delicious beans and vegetable bowl and rice. That's good food if you have to eat in a hurry on a budget.
Mm-hmm. What's the next cycling adventure do you have coming up?
I just spent the weekend bicycling in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And as soon as I hang up with you, I'm going to go bike the rural roads of Wisconsin here.
Dan, the last area I'd like to ask you about is you're 65 years old. You're in great shape. You're living a great life. You live the life you've researched, discovered, and now preach. It seems to me that we, as a people, need to redefine the idea of retirement. And we have a Social Security system. We have a work system. I think things are cockeyed. And I think it's people like you that are teaching so many other people that that's an outdated way of thinking. We need to think about our lives in different kinds of ways and our activity levels. I think the old idea of retirement is contributing in so many ways to people not having a healthy later life. Your thoughts on how we should be rethinking retirement?
Well, let me ask your thoughts first, because I'm actually writing about this. I'd love to hear.
Well, look, if you're digging ditches, you need retirement's a different thing for you. But if you get to do work like we do, the whole idea of retirement has very little appeal to me. I want to have better use of my time. I want to have more productive use of my time than if I'm at it full time in one thing with a lot of responsibility for a lot of other people. But I'm privileged, Dan, to be part of several groups of men. One in particular I'm thinking about because I'm the junior member at 74 years old by 14 years. And the thing the 10 of us, they all have in common is they're still all working, or even if it's not a full-time job, they're vigorous, they're writing, they're into things. We were together a few weeks ago at a ball game together, and one of us who's 91 years old, he just finished a big project, a big not-for-profit. He'd run it for years and years, and it's got a global impact. And he said to me, he just handed it off to the next generation of chair, and he said, it's gone so well. He said, now I'm looking for my next project, the next thing I can really sink my teeth into. And he's genuine about that, and he knows he can make a difference, and he still has the gait of an athlete at 91 years old. But these 10 men are vigorous in pursuit of exciting things. One, 89 years old, sold his business 3 years ago to a larger company. He did a 3-year contract with them, and he just told us that last time we gathered that they asked him to sign another 3-year contract. And we said to him, what are you going to do? He goes, why not? I love what I'm doing. Your thoughts?
People like that are inspirational. And you start thinking about what fuels older age. I think Arthur Brooks has a great book called From Strength to Strength. And he kind of points out when we're young, our brains are good with fluid intelligence. And as we get older, that intelligence crystallizes and it gains wisdom. We naturally have to realize that we're just not going to be as good at synthesizing massive amounts of information, but we're good at teaching. And we have, wisdom is the combination of knowledge plus experience. And those older people are going to have more experience. And an outlet for that, I think, naturally is going to be service. And, a few things we could actually do without trying to get into politics here. But for those of us old enough to remember John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, really set a tone it launched Ameriprise, the AmeriCorps and the Peace Corps, which were really built on this idea of altruism and service. And I think celebrating those, we don't really celebrate those right now. But the anecdotes you told me and the many dozens of anecdotes I tell of older people and fulfilling third chapter of their life or third act of their life, they've segued from their everyday job to service.
Coincidentally, the 91-year-old I told you about is looking for his next quest was the first employee of the Peace Corps.
Oh, really? Well, very cool. That got instilled early. I think also, you talked earlier about your pen and your piece of paper mapping out your health journey. I think it's just as important to map out your purpose and be really clear on your values, what you're good at, what you like to do, and an outlet for that. And so we don't really think deeply about that. So I think places or programs that help us do that would be, it only takes maybe an hour or two, but it would really. In blue zones, people typically don't retire. You talked about vocabulary. Several in the Okinawan vocabulary, longest lived people in the history of the world. There's no word for retirement.
There's the old line about mandatory retirement from boards. Who would like to go speak to Warren Buffett saying, we really don't need you around here anymore, you're too old?
There you go. Exactly. Time to retire. So here's the people with the most wisdom and the most experience. And maybe they can't program AI, but they'll know the consequences of not controlling how we use AI. Mm-hmm. I mean, we need these people. We need every blue zone. They celebrate not youth, but age. Yep. And that's a value we ought to be paying attention to.
I think that's a perfect note to finish on. Dan, thanks for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us today. You're terrific. I've become a huge fan of yours, and I can't wait to read the next work you're coming out with. I know the book is out in September, and your podcast later this month. I already listened to the blurb on there. I can't wait to.
It's a Dan Buettner podcast, and the book is called The Blue Zone's Kitchen One Pot Meals. They're both coming out right now, and I appreciate you mentioning them. Jim, you're a gentleman. I love the fact you're curious. You've obviously become a success, and you're still contributing. And I salute you. And it was really a delight. I hope we get to meet in person again sometime soon. Maybe I'll see you at Lake Nono.
I hope so too. Thanks, Dan. Enjoy your bike ride. Dan, thank you for taking us on a journey and reminding us that living longer is really about living better. Dan lives a life. He's certainly a proponent of how we can make our lives longer, healthier, and more joyful. And I think he reminds us all that we all have the power to change how someone else in our life feels. Use your power today.